So welcome everybody. I'm Charlene Seidel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president and chief philanthropy officer at the Jewish Community Foundation of San Diego, and so happy to be with you all today. So grateful to you all for joining us for this very important conversation about what's really been called Israel's greatest generation. So, as many of you may know who are on the webinar, Israel was immersed in one of the most painful times in advance of October 7th, 2023. The country was divided. There was a great deal of political engagement and a great deal of division in the streets and in the in the inside the country. And on October 7th, 2023, of course, with the terrible events of that day, um, many dire predictions about who would show up for reserves if it was necessary, who would really be there to lead the country to help others in need turned out not to be true because there was is incredible, both an unprecedented mobilization of the reserves, where 125% plus of IDF reservists showed up for duty. I know I was on a plane October 11th, and it was me and 300 IDF reservists flying in from Los Angeles who had been all over the world, who were coming to report for duty. We also saw an incredible, unprecedented civilian kind of draft, as if there had been a civilian draft, with a flourishing of civilian initiatives and way more than half of adult Israelis coming forward to volunteer to take care of their fellows in need in so many different ways. And those of you who are familiar with the work that we did on the Israel Emergency Grassroots Relief Initiative, which supported more than 100 of those initiatives, know the different ways that took shape. I think now we're in a different phase. Monday, with the returning or with the reclamation of the body of Ron Kvili, thank God, like marked a time now with no more hostages in Gaza since 2014. It marked a turning point for many Israelis. This was the true last day of the war. I know for me, like I had a symbolic yellow ribbon next to my signature, my email signature, and I took it down and I took it off. And hopefully, it is a incredible symbol of a step forward. And there's a lot of work to do still to really lead the country into a brighter future. And more than anything, what I hear in my position isn't as much about can Israel be rebuilt from a physical infrastructure. There's a lot of confidence that that can be done. That's already getting started. It's important and in process. The number one question that I get is the human infrastructure there? Are there people in Israel who are ready, willing, and able to stand up to lead, to really guide the citizens of Israel through what is to be ahead? And I get a lot of questions of like what happens now to the energy of all those returning reservists, the hostage families, the families of the bereaved, the families of the reservists who really fought their own war and continue to fight their own war during this war. And I think one of the things I'm so excited about this webinar is that you all will have the chance to meet three people who are really on the front lines, who I would call key members of Israel's greatest generation, who both stepped up after October 7th and continued to step up for many days, weeks, and months and years thereafter. You'll hear a little bit about their stories, but also are boldly looking forward um, and leading Israelis of all different stripes into a new era, what could be a new era for the country, a new era of flourishing. But it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of talent. So I want to introduce our speakers' initiatives briefly, and then I'm going to ask them each some questions. We have a short time, so we would ask you to put your questions in the chat or in the question part of the chat, and I'll do my best, and I'll be monitoring that, and I'll try to incorporate your questions as I'm asking mine. And also, we are going to send something out after this with the recording, with the summary, and we can even try to get into some additional topics that we weren't didn't have the time to address on the webinar if that's necessary. So I just want to quickly introduce our speakers, say 2 sentences each about their initiatives, and then ask to hear from them. So I'll just go in the order on my screen. Matan Yafi, who is a established social entrepreneur already in Israel, founded the very important and impactful organization Desert Stars, which is an NGO that serves the Bedouin community in Israel and brings Israelis together with Bedouin Israelis. That's where I first met Matan about a decade ago when he was engaged in, when he continues to be engaged in that work. Has fought in this war, is a reservist in the army, fought I think 400 plus days, and now it has founded a new political movement that he'll talk more about of some returning reservists called El Hadegel. And Matan will talk more about that in a minute. Miriam Ahmedi. Miriam is the CEO of the Forum of Reservist Wives in Israel, one of the most important and groups that especially early on in the war, there was really little attention given and so much falling on them. And I know I did a lot of speaking about it, is the spouses and the family members of the reservists who suddenly became single parents, managing complicated household budgets, managing childcare, managing so much else with little support. Miriam's organization, the Forum, has advocated for more governmental support, for more societal support, and also is doing a lot in terms of mapping the various needs of reservist families in Israel and engaging them in this leadership process. And finally, Roy Azizi, who also Roy and I met years ago because Roy used to work for our Jerusalem program, the Leastag Foundation's Jerusalem program. He was the manager of the Jerusalem model and also was called up to the reserve after October 7th. And I'll never forget an early conversation that I had with Roy. I think you were still deployed, where you talked about how you see your new Zionist mission as moving to the south of Israel and becoming a pioneer as part of a movement of young people that are moving to the south of Israel and really becoming the new pioneers of Israel. And Roy's initiative is appropriately called Hinenu. Here we are, the pioneers of Israel. So very, very excited to welcome our friends today. Thank you, Matan, Miriam, and Roy. And I want to ask each of you, starting with Miriam, to just give a brief 5-minute background of you, who you are, and also how you reached this point, like to be involved with the forum, Miriam. And then I'm going to ask Matan and Roy the same question.
So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. So I'm Miriam. I'm the wife of Idan and the mother of Yaeli and Yonatan. And on October 7th, my life changed, like the life of everyone in Israel, and I believe the Jews around the world. But for me and for other reservist families, it changed twice because my country changed and also my husband left for reserve duty. Idan is a well-known singer and actor here in Israel, but more importantly, he is
Sorry,
a very
Miriam, I'm
good.
going to interject. Sorry. If you know the show Fauda, Idan is one of the stars of Fauda. It's an American audience, so I wanted to say that.
Um, and he's also very deeply committed reservist combat soldier. So, like many tens of thousand others, on October 7th, he packed his bag early morning, not knowing when and if he will come back. And he did return twice in the over the following 100 days. He came back from combat different each time, quieter, carrying the weight of what he's seen and experienced. And after nearly 100 days of combat, Idan was severely injured in Gaza. And this was the second time my life in the past 2.5 years changed. As a family, we had to rebuild ourselves to learn how to walk again. to learn how to laugh with our children, how to be a couple again. And I will say still 2 years from then, we're still learning that. And the third time my life changed in these 2.5 years were 3 months ago when Idan decided to return to service, to return to Miluim. And inside these 2.5 years, a year ago, I decided that my background is in running NGOs. I do that for more than a decade. And the Forum of Reservist Wives, in a moment I will say a few words about it and the work we do, was doing the shift to from an initiative, from a small initiative to something that is large in scale, and wants to be here for a long time. And the first thing they decided to do is to find a CEO. And I understood that this is my time. This is, I would say, my milui, my reserve for this country to do the most important thing I believe I can do today for my country is to bring also my personal story, but to be here to build the forum as a long-standing organization that will represent the families, the reservist families for the next years. So this is how I entered the forum. And the forum, I would say, just shortly, was founded by 14 amazing women a month after the beginning of the war. They understood that the voice of family is not heard, as Charlene, as you said, and they understood we need to change that. And what we do from the beginning of the forum until today is to advocate for reservist families across Israel and to work to shape policy. We bring the voices of families to the government ministries, to the Knesset, to the IDF, and to the public discourse. We shifted the national conversation from the combat to the family, understanding that without a family, a strong and resilient family that is able to support the soldier, he won't be able to go to combat. And we do that from the beginning of the forum until today. And every single day we fight, not in combat, but we fight for our homes, and we fight for the country of Israel to have the right infrastructures to be able to hold the reserve, the days of reserve we needed in the next years to support the security of the state of Israel. So this is what we do as a forum. We try to do the best to change the way and perspective of how the country is regarding the reservists and their families.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for that. Matan, same question. Like, tell us a little bit more about you and how you came in this mission to lead El Hadegel.
Hi, good evening or good morning, actually, and thank you for having me. So my name is Matan Yafe. I was born and raised Israeli, fifth generation. I grew up to be a soldier of the state of Israel, of the idea of Israel, and kind of be in service to it. All my life I did social things, including establishing Desert Stars and many other things. I'm married to Aviv, and we have 5 boys, Nevo, Negev, Arbel, Tavor, and Sinai, all mountains here in the region. I led Desert Stars for a decade, then finished, went to Harvard, did a master's degree, stood Harvard for anti-Semitism. It became a very big deal. And because of this lawsuit, Harvard needed to adopt the IRA policy, the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. So that kind of became a thing in my life that I'm very actively working with. I came back to Israel on August of 23. We kind of, relocated ourselves, and then October 7th came. I immediately went. I'm a major in the Commando Brigade. Eventually, I served 450 days during this war everywhere, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and whatever. and what I want to share with you is actually one of the hardest moments for me in the war, which is very different. We've seen all the atrocities and we've been through a lot, and what Miriam said about being quiet, etc. We all kind of went through it, and many bad things, but that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about January of 24, the first time we came back home after a few months of fighting. And we knew with all of our heart that Israel has changed forever. It was clear to us that it will never go back to what it used to be or before October 7th. And the shock we had when we opened our cell phones and understood that nothing had changed broke our heart. We then didn't know that we're going to go back again and again and again for several rounds. I did 6 in total. But we understood that even though we kind of finished the army part, again, we didn't know that it wasn't over, but even though it supposedly did over, we knew that we need to continue the fight in order to make Israel better. And we went and we spoke to all the politicians, and it was unbelievable, but we've understood that none of them is going to actually change. For them, it's all just another day in the office. And we did the only thing we know how to do, and is to say in Hebrew, "Acharai," follow me, lead by example. And after we understood that nothing is going to change, we said we need to be the one that are making the change, guys from the reserve and all kind of folks that we met throughout the battles. And our goal was to bring back Zionism. All this right and left, Bibi, not Bibi, all these things that tear the state of Israel apart and tear the Israeli society apart must step aside. And we need to bring back into the center Zionism, pure Zionism. The mere existence of the state of Israel is the safe haven for the Jewish people. That is our goal. That is what this state was established for, to be a safe place for all of us, no matter where we live, where we can always go back and defend ourselves. And people today are willing to jeopardize this and sacrifice this for a particular agenda from either side. And we understood that as people who were willing to jeopardize their life and their families and everything just for the existence of Israel, we need to bring the same energy into the political sphere. And we established El Adegel. I'll be sharing with you today a project that I started named Tasbiruli, which I go to the street and I had enough of these all the politicians. I go, I meet them, and it's horrific. So I open tables everywhere in Israel on the street, and I speak to people. Tasbiruli in Hebrew, it's explained to me. It became very viral in Israel, all these videos where I speak to Haredi people or Arab people or secular or from
Matan,
everywhere.
we'll send links to the videos, sorry, out in the follow-up so that people can see, because there are some English subtitled one, and it's sort of the
Yes,
brand
today
of your
all of them.
political movement. Sorry to interrupt, but just to explain
Yeah, yeah.
that.
No, important. Yeah, we put in the subtitles on everyone, and they're very viral. And through that, we try to unveil how far each political side exists today went from the Zionist way. And our goal is to bring back and gravitate the state of Israel and the Israeli society and also the Jewish people. I know with all of my heart that if Israel will not be the best place on earth to for any Jew in the world, it doesn't mean that they have to come and live here, but it must be the best place, a place that where they can be proud of. And if it won't be that, it won't be able to exist. So this is our mission, to now become the leadership, to move the generation that has failed miserably and to replace them, and to set an alternative for the Israeli leadership from the younger generation who came from the battlefields, learned on their blood what is the high price of of tearing the society apart, and lead us back into the Zionist way.
Thank you so much, Matan. Roy?
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Charlene, and the whole staff. My name is Roy Azizi. I'm 29 years old. And same as Miriam said, my life also changed on October 7th. I used to lead the Jerusalem Model in Jerusalem, which is a civic society network of 200 plus social leaders in Jerusalem of all colors, of all walks of life. And I used to do that role because I felt like Jerusalem and the whole state of Israel or the Israeli society was in a crisis. What I defined even before October 7th as a poly-crisis, a crisis of all systems. But I knew that the Israeli society has the power to change it. And unfortunately, because of the division and the tear that we had before October 7th, we saw that crisis happens. And on October 7th, I was actually traveling up north with no signal with friends. And only late morning, we realized what's happening. And we drove down south, each to their own base. I found myself in the Southern Command of the IDF as a result. And I remember driving down south, realizing that this tectonic catastrophe is going to split our lives into before and after. And mainly the young adults in Israel, the young generation that hasn't been here on Yom Kippur, 73. And I remember asking myself, like during, as things reveal, as October 7th has started to become understandable, I remember asking myself, what's going to be the opportunity in this crisis? How are we going to, as a society or as a people even, leverage this catastrophe into a better future? And during those days, I had some very meaningful experiences in Kfar Aza, in the Western Negev, and in the Nova Festival site as a reservist. And I remember on October 15th, already texting to friends that I feel like as soon as I'll have a first brief on reserve service, I'm going to leave everything behind and relocate to the Western Negev. And so on my first brief, I went back to the Jerusalem model in order to unfortunately resign, leave Jerusalem, and relocate to the Western Negev. I've done it with nothing, no community, not even an apartment, and no job. But I've done it because I felt like in this time of crisis, we need to start a movement of pioneers, of young pioneers of all walks of life, of all walks of Zionism, to come and live, to relocate to the Western Negev, integrate within the communities that were hurt, and pioneer an impact in order to support, contribute to the revitalization of this region. Thankfully, in the last 2 years, we've managed to start this grassroots movement that we call Hinenu, and mobilize hundreds of young adults, religious and secular, right-wing and left-wing, both to the Western Negev and also in the last year up to the Galil, to Yeshuvim, towns and villages, kibbutzim and moshavim, which were hurt. People are relocating, integrating, and impacting through quality employment, social initiatives, and businesses that people start. And we really understand that it's really thanks to an understanding that those pioneers will start a change from the bottom, and they'll become the future also leaders of Israel, who will also work from up top to shape our future.
Thank you, Roy. I remember that meeting and thinking I would be doing the same. If I were in your position, this is like the way to serve the country of Israel. I remember you were very apologetic, but it was such a mission for you that you're really leading now. I want to ask, you've each touched on this, but I want to ask you to address it a little bit more specifically, and I'll start with Matan. As you think about the next 5 to 10 years in Israel, what like excites you most, but and also what concerns you most? You started on that track. You also started on a track of values, Matan. You said you want people around, Jews around the world, to be really proud of Israel and proud of the values that it manifests. And so if each of you, starting with Matan, can just talk a little bit more about that, about what excites you and what concerns you, those two pulling emotions, and the values that you see as critical to this next stage and that you bring to your leadership.
So what fears me, for me, the conception that we all lived in is that we, many people from the system, the military system, the governmental system told us for many, many years is that Israel is not under an existential threat, and that allowed them to go to very different directions in basically fighting with each other instead of continuing to build the Zionist vision. And for us, the October 7th was a wake-up call. Unfortunately, it wasn't for many of them, and they continued this game. But we know now, with every cell of our body, that Israel is under an existential threat. And I'm not saying that in order to put fear into anyone's heart. I say that because we need to acknowledge this simple fact. One of the things that are people lost in I think in the modern world, but definitely here, is to just look at truth in the eyes and acknowledge it. Like we understand that Hamas, you don't need intelligence unit to understand that they want to kill us all. They say it out loud in every opportunity they have. We need to acknowledge the truth. And some of the truth is that Israel is under existential threat, and we have a responsibility to make sure that something like October 7th will never, ever happen again. So what concerns me is that we'll go back into the political fighting of which state will this state be, and not be busy with the simple question of whether this state will be exist or not. And it's our generation responsibility now to never forget and to work constantly in order to make that happen. And that leads me to what excites me, because I think that the younger generation here woke up. People from the age of 20 to 50 got the slap of their life, and I think that many of them, especially in the public that served. And that's another big fracture in the Israeli society, because not everyone served, and that's the reality. The ultra-Orthodox do not serve, the Arabs do not serve, and basically they are about 40% of the Israeli society. So the 60% who do serve, I think their life has changed forever. And for many of them, it was a wake-up call, and they are now stepping up into the understanding that we cannot neglect the question of Israel's existence. And we need to work on it constantly and devote our time and energy to it. And it's a very talented generation. And I think that if they'll set their mind to it, they'll be able to do miracles. I think we also need to be reminded of the righteousness of our way, something that we've neglected. The political conflict in Israel kind of spread us apart. Some people neglected Judaism. Some people neglected connection to the land. Some people neglected Western values. Every group neglected something. And I think the beauty of Zionism is that it combined everything, because the first, second, and third priority was the existence of Israel. And once you prioritize that over anything else, then you're able to integrate all these important values and make all of it sense, because you understand that your role is to make sure that tomorrow Israel will be strategically better than what it was yesterday. And this is the mission of the generation. And I devote my life to it, and I excited by the possibility and the opportunity. October 7th was an incredible catastrophe, but it's also absurdly a window of an opportunity. The way I see it, maybe the last window of an opportunity in order to do the change that is needed here to build new leadership who can bring Israel back into the Zionist path.
Thank you, Matan. There's a question that came up that I will address in a little bit, but I also just want to say about how for Jews around the world, October 7th was a wake-up call, and how can we join with you to also, like all of you, this collective generation to restore these values, to work on these values. There's a few different ways, and we'll address that a little bit. But I think to your point, it was a wake-up call not only for Israelis, but also for Jews around the world that served in their own way. Many of them, I certainly know through philanthropic and other means, and advocacy, etc. Roy, same question. Like, what concerns you? What excites you? And what are the values that you see as moving us all forward?
Yeah. So before October 7th, because of the ongoing crisis that we're living in, a lot of young adults in Israel were in despair. People are starting to feel like questioning their future in Israel, seeing it as an unclear future. And unfortunately, we saw a lot of people who decided to relocate and leave Israel. But same as Matan said, October 7th, and it happened also across history, across the history of our people, every crisis creates leaders. Every crisis creates a layer within the society, a cadre that steps up and says, okay, we have national missions that we want to take care of. And, all across the last 2 years, I've met thousands of young adults, dozens of them who are doing incredible things, tackling national problems and national missions, and really stepping up and taking leadership in business, but mostly in social civic society. And I want to be more specific and even say regarding community building in the regions that we work in, both the Galil and the Western Negev. Before October 7th, we felt like as a society, people don't want to live together. People have been defining their division in terms of their political identity, like a thing that separates us, and we're not the same people. But you can see clearly in the young generation that people are saying we want to live together, we want to act together, and we want to be there in the places that were hurt. So the movement that Hinenu created and still creates, both down south and up north, is a movement of people who are saying we want to live together, religious and secular. We want to live together, right wing and left wing. We want to be there because there's a greater cause. There's a greater Zionist mission for us to step up to. And it's not only in the battlefield. Even though we've been for 2 years now in the battlefield, in the front, we understand that the civic front and the community building front of rebuilding and the prosperity of the regions that were hurt is our mission, and people see it as a grandiose national mission, and people stepping up to do it together. And that's what excites me the most, both the understanding that this crisis creates leadership and that you see that the grassroots movement is united. And this is what in the future will shape the Israeli society.
Thank you, Roy, and I hope you don't mind if I just mention, because there are some San Diegans in the call that are familiar. We have a partnership in our community with the region of Shara Negev, one of the most hard-hit regions, and many of us have gone. And Roy, actually, where he moved and where he lives now is Kibbutz Gevim, that some of us on the call might have gone to, and that we have a very close connection to. So it makes it all the more personal, I think, what you're saying about the young people that you're really mobilizing. Miriam, same question, like what concerns you, what excites you, and what values do you see as leading the country forward?
I think that what I will start with the concern as a good Jew. I think what concerns me the most is after 2.5 years of ongoing war, the mindset of Israel as I would call it as a state of the leaders of the leaders who are now in the Knesset and in the government offices has not changed. Like all of our reality has changed since October 7th, meaning the way we do things here in the country has to change also. We cannot keep on doing the same things in the same way we did before. And when we look at the reservists and the reservist families, this is in a great extent, we can see the problem in this topic because the army says loudly and clear that for the next 5 years, if everything is going to be normal and there is no war, the army will need us, the reservist families, at least between 70 to 80 days a year. Okay, that means between 2 to 3 months a year. My husband, the people here, Matan and Roy, are going to be in reserve. Okay, that is a great change from the days before October 7th when we needed to do approximately 18 days in average. That is a great change from 6,000 soldiers, reservists in every time. The army needs today 60,000. That is 10 times bigger the amount of reservists, and still the country of Israel is putting band-aids over the problem, trying to like there's a hole in the boat and trying to take out the water instead of closing the hole. And I think this is what concerns me the most, because we're not 1 month, 2 months, half a year after the beginning of war. We're here 2.5 years after. And in this point of time, I believe that there should be like comprehensive national programs, understanding how to build the right way the country is going to deal with the reservists and the security needs we have in the country, because we're used to in Israel. It was the slogan for short wars. You have short wars, you can bring reservists, but there are no short wars. Matan did 400 and something days the past 2.5 years in reserve. He's been more to reserve than in his home, and that is crazy. Okay, and the country needs to build itself differently to support those people so they will be able to do the reserve to keep this country safe. So this is what concerns me, and this is what we try to do as a forum to change this mindset, not just putting band-aids and closing small problems, but to look at it as a whole and to understand how this time can be also a time to grow from and to increase the resilience of the families, of the reservists of this country, and not just to like shut off fires that start. But what I think gives me hope, and we did not coordinate between the three of us, we did not meet before this Zoom, but I think our answers are the same, is I think the people of Israel, and I will say particularly the civic society of Israel, October 7th surprised us all, but thousands of people, dozens of thousands, went out of their homes to reserve, and if not to reserve, to volunteer, and if not to volunteer, to give money to people. We all wanted to do something, and something inside of us understood we need to do that together. And so when you walk between the people, you can see like a light of wanting a change, something that is deep inside of us, and people try to do their best for the country. So this really gives me hope. And I think in terms of values, so I think that responsibility is a value I hope that will be stronger here in the leadership and as a society, to see what is my responsibility to my country, what can I do the best. And each one of us is different, but the best I can do for my country, and to see like a long-term perspective and not just short-term, because I believe this is what we need today for this country to thrive from this situation, not just survive it.
I think what you're talking about, Miriam, and what all of you talked about is really, it is a return. I think, as you said, Matan, and all of like Israel was founded on this value around the collective, that together we can do more than what we can do as individuals, and maybe got away from that and was forced through civilian initiatives, through the reservists, through others, to reckon with that after October 7th, and now maintaining this collective, and that each of you are building movements that of diverse people, that probably come from different backgrounds but are united around some common values. And I think I'm with people that are much more connected to the army than I am. But some of the things I heard from family members and friends reflecting on their time in the army is that their units were really different. Some of them maybe lived in the settlement. Some of them lived in the city in Tel Aviv, like they were left and right or whatever, but they came together with a common mission and a common purpose. And that's what each of you are reflecting now. Excuse me. I want to go on to the next question and ask Roee to answer first. It's a question that I like to ask. It's about advice, because each of you are leading and you're stepping into roles and you're saying, we don't have, of course, there are generations whose shoulders you stand on, but also you're saying we are ready to lead. So I want to sort of ask you, excuse me, what is the best advice you've received in this time? How do you manifest it? And it's a long question, what advice do you give to those that you lead to keep them committed and hopeful? Roy?
Yeah. Actually, it's a very significant story for myself. So I'm happy that you asked this question. I met a very successful businessman a year and a half ago. He lives in Israel. He's an investor, and he's doing great stuff. And I presented the story of Hinenu and our vision, and he told me, Roy, there's one thing that young Israeli entrepreneurs are doing everything great. There's one thing that they're not doing good enough. And I said, what's that? And he said, you're thinking too small. You're not dreaming big enough. And I was surprised to hear it. And he started to explain what he meant. And at the beginning, I found it hard to understand because I'm speaking about the national vision. And after a few weeks, I realized what he spoke about, and it completely changed my mind. And there's an old statement by Shimon Peres who also said, like, dreaming small and dreaming big costs the same, so we might as well dream big. And I think that the young generation in Israel is starting to think big and dream big. And actually, after a few years of really living in an existential threat, right? Like 3 years of COVID and then 2 years of in the battlefield, Israelis are experiencing a reality that no other young adult in the Western world is experiencing, like 5 years of complete extreme instability. So people go out of this reality now, and when I meet them in lectures, in talks, in programs that they do pre-military and also after military and leadership programs, and also our network of our movement, I keep telling people what I learned, that we should start dreaming big. We should think about Israel's future 20 years ahead, 50 years ahead. We should think about the Israeli people, the Jewish people across the globe, and how do we connect the Jewish people to Israel in more innovative ways. And only then we will be able to actually create tectonic foundational changes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Roy. Really good advice for all of us. Miriam, same question. Best piece of advice and how you manifest it.
I will take an advice I got in the age of 16 when I was a captain in the basketball team in my high school. My coach, he told me one thing I go with it the entire life. He said, when we win, it's the players. When we lose, it's the coach. And it's something I take with myself. I believe that when we choose to lead something, when we choose to be in the front, we need to take responsibility for it. And we need to lead with the idea that the people around us they have to be part of the change. They have to be part of the growth. And this is how we see like the forum, and this is what we want the country of Israel also to understand, like, this idea of responsibility. And the second advice I got is not an advice, it's just children are like the best. They give us the best school in life. My daughter, my oldest, is 6 years old, and when Idan went to reserve in her kindergarten, she was then 4 years old. In her kindergarten, we and another family were the only ones doing reserve, and from 20 something families. And she asked me why dad has to go. All the other dads are here and like playing like in the afternoon with the kids. And I said to her, I understand that it's hard, but it's something dad has to do. And she asked if it's something he has to do or he chooses to do. And I said he chose to do that. And she said if he chose, then like I would say if he chose, then that means it's important. Like if he chose not to be with me and he went there, then he has something important to do. And this is like the advice that carries our like personal lives, and the things I try to do is to understand if there is something important to do. We choose to be there. We choose to give everything we can to try to make it better. So if my 4-year-old could understand that she's giving her father to the country of Israel because he chose to do that, it's important, then we can all choose to do that also.
Very wise. Thank you, Miriam. Matan, same question.
Um, so when I do rock climbing, and it's from another world, but it connected to our reality. And when I learned how to rock climbing, I went with someone who's far better than I am. And I went to a route that, I don't know, ranked 7A, if someone here rock climbs. And it started off really easy. And then instead of doing the easy way, I went to the side and kind of made it harder. And he told me, "What are you doing?" And I told him, "It's too easy. I'm making it harder." And he told me, "Don't worry, the hardship will come. When you can go easy, go easy." And for me, that is going with me throughout my life, and definitely in the last 2 years. Like I acknowledge that hardships will come. They will come also to the state eventually. No matter what we'll do, this is the region, this is the neighborhood, this is the meaning of being a Jew. And we need to also try and make fun over the way and surround ourselves with people we love, and whatever can be easy should be easy, and not too hard on ourselves. And kind of it puts, for me, many things in proportion, including my kids and my family and everything, the way the life balance. So that's one thing I would say. And the other thing that, again, that the last 2 years were a very powerful reminder in that sense, is that I once heard a story about the Dalai Lama, that a reporter went to him and wanted to interview him and told him, what's your message to the people, whatever. And he was every month or so, he was in a day of silence. He couldn't speak. So he took a note out and wrote, "My life is my message." And in the past 2 years, in the Israeli army, lead by example is very powerful. The commanders, you can say anything you like about the plan and what we're going to do and how it's important, but the only way to move soldiers into hell, basically, and into a reality that some might not come back from, and unfortunately, we've lost too many, is to step up and do it yourself and lead by example. And I think that when I look at the generation of leaderships here, of people who hold leadership position, I don't want to even call them leaders, we see that leading by example is not something that they live according to. And I think that that's what made Israel great, and that what should continue to lead us as a leading value. We need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to lead by example, internally, externally, everywhere. And this is something that I take and I say.
Thank you, Matan. For the final question, our time together was too short, but for the final question, I want to stick with the topic of advice and go back also even to what we were talking about before about this wider Jewish community and community that kind of is looking for ways to support you. And also we want to be supported. We care a lot and we've been affected as well. And so, what's your advice? We're thousands of miles away in San Diego, which isn't in Mexico, as some people ask me in Israel. What can we do both to help support this effort and to be sustained by this effort, whether we're in the next generation or, the older generation, we're all looking for this kind of energy. Um, how can philanthropists especially support what you're doing? And how can we connect what you're doing with young people that are here in the US? I feel like what you've described to us is like a human iron dome for the country going forward. And so how can we best sustain that iron dome? It's obviously a multifaceted question, but just your best sort of shot at it at this point in time. And we'll continue the discussion, of course, in many ways. I hope that we can support you. So I'll start with you, Miriam.
I would say that the first of all, it's important to say that for us, every occasion like this, every chance like this, that we know here that there are people abroad that think of us, that it's important for them, that their hearts are caring and wanting to support. That is, for we hear it from many people. That is a very strong way to support, even if you're not thinking you're doing that. And I would say that I think that the most important thing today is to create infrastructures for the new era of Israel, rebuilding itself from October 7th catastrophe that happened here. And I think that the most important thing is to really build and to support initiatives or things that are happening that are able to change the reality, and not just something specific that happens in some kind of in any kind of place, but something that is able to have a wide range of influence that changes the atmosphere here, or the way people behave here, or the way the country works here. Like to think, and as Roy said, to dream big, and also in philanthropy to dream big about what Israel can be, and to be in the places you find are the new or better Israel you want to see, and to really like to I don't have the word,
Support
לחזק,
that,
to
to
support, yeah,
uplift it.
support them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Miriam. And I think particularly you're talking about the human infrastructure of
Yeah.
Israel, the talent. Matan?
Uh, I'll be rude to live up to the expectation from an Israeli, and I'll say that I worked. It was never my dream to go in this vector I'm now heading towards. I was never the chairman of student council. I know I'm an entrepreneur. I love establishing social organizations. I established 5 so far, and all of them did very well, and that was my game plan. But kind of understanding what now needs to be done, I spoke to many American friends, etc., and we told them about it, and they tell me, we don't have, as Americans, we feel that it's not right for us to be involved in things that concern Israel's internal affairs, specifically things regarding not just politics, but also policy, and also the things that Miriam spoke about, etc. And I want to invite you to be heavily involved in these kind of things, because I think that what we all learned in the past 2 years, that our destinies are combined and we must work together. And I want to tell you that you're not just welcomed, but you're also needed in being a part of everything. The design of what Israel is, the identity of Israel, the existence of Israel are all questions that relate to all of us. It doesn't matter if you live in San Diego or if you live in Strigim or wherever. It's our futures, it's our kids' future. We have responsibility as the state to be far better than we were in the past decades with connecting the Jews in the diaspora, especially the younger generations who often go to other districts, to connect them to the state of Israel. We also have responsibility to know your life better. Often it's you who come here. We need to also understand what is the meaning of being Jews in the diaspora, but I think that we must tie our destinies way stronger than they are, and there is nothing that you cannot be part of, and you should be part of also the internal affairs and all the inner policies and politics of Israel, because it doesn't affect only our future. It affects the entire Jewish people future, and you're welcomed.
Thank you, Matan. I heartily agree. And I've had many conversations where people say, like, I don't want to be political, or I don't want to be, but I think we all want to stand with the people of Israel. We all want to stand side by side with you all and your peers and your cohorts. So that's a really, really, that's not political. That's standing alongside us and changing our collective destiny. So we'll wrap, Roy, with you to share with us your best advice to us, or your best call to action.
Yeah, so first of all, say Hinenu. This is my call to action. Say here we are, and join for the efforts, for the multiple efforts that we have in Israel. We have diverse national problems, challenges, and needs. And in terms of advice, I suggest you believe and demand out of young adults. Young adults in Israel, across history, even since the establishment of Israel, were the pioneers that turned out to be leaders. You could see it in the first Aliyah, second Aliyah, all across history. People who started as really teenagers eventually were the ones who established the state of Israel. And these generations, young adults, are going to be enormous. They're going to lead. And I think that believing in them and seeing them as the next future leaders and investing in their initiatives is going to be a crucial part of building them and cultivating them as leaders. And it's not only believing in them, but also demanding that they will work hard, execute, and really form the next level of leadership, of Zionist leadership in Israel.
Inenu, thank you. That's a really great call to action. Here we are, and say it. I want to thank each of you. It's a busy evening. I know that you're taking off time, like that you probably could be with your families or working with your movement and the people that you work with, for seeing this as important. I know that I speak, for people on this call and not on this call, that we do stand with you. We're going to be sending out in the follow-up information about each of your initiatives, opportunities to help support both specific and general, and also some other collateral materials like the videos that Matan mentioned and others. And we just really thank each of you for all you're doing to lead the country, to lead our collective destiny, as Matan said. And thanks to everybody that cared enough to be on this webinar. We are going to be distributing the recording. Please encourage your friends or others that really care about Israel to learn more about these initiatives and the many, many ways that we can help support the talent that will drive Israel forward. There will always be people to build buildings, and that's really important. But without the quality talent and humans to actually lead these initiatives, Israel will be much less off, and it will be much better off with this talent. So thank you, everybody, and have a good night. Have a good rest of the day.